Welcome back. So next we have is Kevin Beimers. He currently runs an Hollywood indie video game studio called Italic Pig. For the past 8 years, him and his incredibly talented and attractive team have been developing high concept, very high concept entertainment for all platforms. Kevin is a former chairperson of Games NI and is interested in helping other communities such as the Northern Ireland Raspberry Jam with different events, helping coordinate different projects and giving you a bit of a taster of the games industry. He's going to join us now live from the workshop and give you a kind of insight on games development.
How you doing? My name's Kevin Beimers. As Sam said, I want to thank Sam for inviting me out here for one of the talks today at NIDC. I've got a talk entitled, I guess, How I Got Into Games. It might be how you could get into games. I think it's probably best to call it, it's easier to get into games than you might think. Let's start with an introduction. My name's Kevin. We did that already. I am 43 years old, which means I have a very difficult time identifying with all of you out there. I'm assuming we're talking to the Raspberry Jam sized audience, which is anywhere from, I don't know, 6 up until whenever you stop becoming a child. I guess I'm still in that bracket. Right, 43, and that means that I am older than the internet. I just think that that's a really interesting point that we have to make here, that you're all growing up in a time when the internet is there and has always been there. And a lot of us, you know, in the 43 and up age bracket, remember a time when you had to figure things out for yourselves. So this here is a dramatization. It's not a picture of me, but it's a picture of someone very much like me getting my first Atari video game system way back, I don't know, this must have been 1985, sometime around the time when Marty McFly had his DeLorean thrust upon him. At this time, the idea of a home game system was incredible. Imagine not having to go to an arcade and pay quarters, or did you want 20p's here? I don't know. Anyway, plunking money into a machine to play games that other people have made, it was such a distant idea of a career, and finally was inside the home. On the back of that, the Commodore 64, some of you may have grown up with, or not grown up with, some of you parents would have had like a VIC-20, maybe a ZX Spectrum, maybe something like that, like way, way back we're talking. And this system needed something. This system had games, it had stuff that you could play with, it had stuff that you could hack, stuff that you can get into the bits and pieces of and see how they worked. And this is where I learned to not only play games, but to make games. Fast forward, let's talk 30 something years into the future, and I'm now running a company called Italic Pig. Now, Italic Pig, as Sam said, we make high concept video games, we jump around genres, we focus on strange narrative, quirky stories, goofy dialogue, that kind of a thing. First game we made was called Schrodinger's Cat and the Raiders of the Lost Quark. It was a quantum physics action adventure. Worked for quite a while on a game called Mona Lisa, which was a Renaissance art heist and forgery game. We've put quite a lot of work into a game called The Infinite Hotel. The Infinite Hotel is a VR game. It was our first step into the immersive space where you play the elevator operator in a hotel with an infinite number of floors. We're currently working heavy into a game called Paleo Pines. Some of you may have seen it on social media and things like that, but it's a game where it's a management sim where you are farming with dinosaurs. And we've got this one, Quest, that's coming up the pipe. That one we've just been funded for prototype fund from the Creative Europe Media. But anyway, all these games I'd like to say they all build on the one before, but they don't. They're all completely different from the one before. Don't start a business that way anyway. But what it means is that when you make a game, you are not an expert at making games. You are an expert at making one game by the time you're finished. And then you move on to the next game, and you either build on the stuff you know, or you go, I've done that, let's try something else. Now, you came here for how to get into games. It might be easier than you think. All right, so how did I go from being that guy, jumping up and down with my Atari, to being the guy at Italic Pig? Now, I could tell you my story, It won't help you a whole lot because I don't expect anybody to follow the same path, and times have changed. Back when I was a kid, there were, I don't know if you're looking at the slides, I know I am. There were 3 possible jobs available to us. There was blacksmithing, lumberjacking, and dentistry, and nothing else to choose from. And then came this thing called computers. And computers were new, and they were exciting, and they were like, ooh, maybe there's something in this, like playing video games. Well, in fact, back then, computers were good for 2 things. One was going to the moon, the other one was for playing Pong. And so I chose Pong. I always had dreams of going to the moon, but sadly, the human race got bored with that. So, got myself an Atari. I got myself a Commodore 64. I started taking pieces apart. I started figuring out how games work behind the scenes. And it was just a case of let's see what happens. Now, one day the internet came along. This was a new and surprising thing, and suddenly everybody could start sharing knowledge, and you could get things, but it was still a little bit, what you find, you're not quite sure what's going on. You do a search because you've just learned what a search is. You have access to it here and there on a very slow connection. It wasn't the hive mind that we have today. But through the internet, I saw this, and I said, I think this internet thing is probably going to be big. So I started to teach myself HTML. HTML is a coding language that the entire web is based on, and you can look at any page and figure out how it comes together, well, the simple ones anyway, through HTML. From there, I learned that things could be animated on the web, and I started getting interested in Flash. Flash at the time was Macromedia. It's now Adobe. It's now obsolete. But it was an animation language, moving pictures, moving image, whatever you want to call it. But it made it very easy to make little games. And again, you had to kind of figure it out. Worked in New York City for a while, doing developing for that. Then I took a huge trip around America where I did a blog before blog was a word. It was a travel journal back at the time. But learned how to code, learned how to do sort of CMS type stuff, coding this specifically and writing for it to tell stories. After the blog, I rode a tricycle around Australia. It has nothing to do with learning to play games, but I guess it made me an interesting person. I think that's part of the fun. Worked for the Department of Labor in New Zealand for a little while. Then I did health and safety training courses, the animation for those, which is like the most interesting part of a really boring field of study. Finally, I moved to Northern Ireland, where I was invited to be the art director on a kids' TV series, where it was called Lifeboat Luke. It was water safety. It was for 4 to 7-year-olds. But the thing that all of these things have in common is that I didn't really know how to do them before I started. I mean, I suppose that's the nature of anything. But knowing that you don't know how to do it, a lot of people use that as a barrier. It's a thing to stop you from getting started. And in fact, everybody starts at 0. So, if you think you know nothing about making games, that's okay. I was once that as well, and now I run a company. Off the back of doing this kids' TV series, we tried to make another series, but actually that turned into a game. This is a game called Hector, Badge of Carnage. We're now 10 years ago. And from there, that gained the notoriety or the success, the interest of Telltale, which is was one of the biggest adventure game companies of its time. If you've ever seen Minecraft Story Mode on Netflix or played it, that was done by Telltale Games. And there were a number of things that came before that. Walking Dead, obviously one of the biggest. Right, so here we are at Italic Pig. That's how I got to games. I told you it wouldn't help. Now, I want to answer your questions of why should you get into games? Now, if you're asking why should I get into games, if you think it's because there's loads of money involved, I'm afraid the answer is no. Don't go into it for the money. There is money. Some people have it, not me, but it is possible, but it should not be the driving force that sends you there. It's art more than, it's a combination of art and business, but if you go in thinking that's where the money is, you'll spend many years searching for it, and it may be fruitless by the end. I don't want to put you off, but make sure you're going into the right reasons. Second, it's fun and easy just playing games all day. No, that's not another reason to go into games. Do not go into games because you think it's just play. As if you've ever seen a 2-hour animation and then you've looked into the making of and found it took them 7 years to make this for your 2 hours of enjoyment and your 4 stars or whatever it is you're going to give it, that's the struggle. You are doing art, and you are doing creativity, and you are putting this out to people who have such a wealth of content out there that they'll look at yours and go, that's fine too. But that, if you're doing it because it's fun all the time, it's a lot of work. Don't be scared though. Third, some guy at an event like me told me it's a worthwhile profession. That's also a no, because if I am the first person who said to you, you should be in games, I don't want to play your games. Because if you are meant to be in games, you have already said the phrase, I really love games, to yourself. I want to be there. I want to do anything I can to get there. The excitement you have behind the creation of a game, the possibility of being involved in a game, that's the enthusiasm that's got to drive you through learning how to do it and being part of the industry. Anything else is you're passing through, and you're possibly moving on to other things. But if you've said to yourself, I really love games, then come on in. If you haven't, and you think it's one of those other 3 reasons, well, don't worry. The world needs more dentists, and it needs more blacksmiths, and definitely more lumberjacks. So, how can I get into games? Now, easy. The answer is, make a game. You can say to yourself, but I don't know how to make a game. Well, then figure it out. Figure it out is the phrase that I want you to go home with. 3 words. If this is all you learned today, take figure it out with you. Everybody has got one of these. If that picture is not clear or is not up there, it is a phone. Everyone has access to the internet. Everyone has Wi-Fi at home. If you don't have it at home, then you have it at Starbucks, or we're at your school, or at the public library, or anything like that. And reminding you again that I am older than the internet, and yet I figured out how to do games on a Commodore 64, which has so many limitations and so many reasons not to make games on it. You have the internet, and the internet is free. And that means that access to the combined knowledge of the entire human race is free. So if you are on your phone and you are spending your entire time on your phone watching Ping Pong Trick Shots 4, or, cats falling off things, or whatever it is you happen to be doing, or starting an argument about how good a movie was, you could be using that time to figure out how to make a game, how to follow your passion. So, Google is free. YouTube is free. Tutorials are free. Stack Overflow. If you haven't heard of this, you haven't done enough coding yet. Stack Overflow is where coders help other coders. That's free. Every Game SDK. SDK stands for Standard Developers Kit. Also free. Maybe not all of them. I haven't checked out all of them. But the big ones, Unity and Unreal, that's the one that actual game developers use. So our company uses them. Everyone I know. Those are free. They want you to get started. They want you to download it. They want you to play with it. These other ones, Stencil, RPG Maker, Game Maker Studio 2, they're more accessible. They're closer to what you can just, reach out and grab and get started on. Unity and Unreal, they can be pretty daunting when you first open it up, but it's all free and it's all there, and you can grab it and watch a tutorial. Just figure it out. Also, coding clubs. Coding clubs like Raspberry Jam that meets once a month when there isn't a pandemic on. Those sorts of clubs are free, and you can get together with other kids who are like you and have an interest and listen to talks by people like me and like Sam and everybody else in here, and just figure out that coding, you don't have to be scared of it. It's not this secret thing that happens inside a computer that's for somebody else to work on and provide you with that entertainment. You can be that person. Finally, and this, again, if you take this away, this is part of figuring it out, learning things without permission is free. And what I mean by that is I know so many people who have a barrier, who say, I'm not old enough to learn that yet, or we haven't been taught that at school yet, or I haven't come across that in my studies yet, or we do that club next month, we do. If you're interested in it, it's there. If you're interested in it, it is on the internet, it is a Google search, it is a YouTube tutorial, it's a Wikipedia page. Somebody out there has what you need to know already on display. So if you are interested in making games, then go learn something without permission and figure it out. Because if I can figure out how to do it on this, anybody can figure out how to do it on the internet. Thank you very much. I've been Kevin Beimers. I hope you enjoyed that.
So, welcome back. And that was Kevin Beimers with his talk on how to get into games. Now, Kevin has actually led quite a few different points around the Northern Ireland Raspberry Jam, and definitely different things in terms of his knowledge and kind of inquisitive kind of views on things, especially with stuff like Pi Wars, building robots out of Lego. He's got mountainous numbers of videos on that, and definitely have posted them into the Slack. It is quite a good kind of perspective, because it's the idea of being able to find out this entire component comprises of these smaller parts, and it all goes together, works together to make one final thing. So we've got a couple of questions. We found some on the chat from the Hop-In. Thank you very much. We're going to ask them now. But I'm just going to give a kind of an introduction, kind of an idea around, or a kind of an idea around what Kevin is doing. So with the games industry already booming and only getting bigger, there's only a huge and growing demand for local talent. So there hasn't been a better time to get started in the industry. Our first speaker was Kevin, and he does run the indie video game studio Italic Pig. And so for the past 8 years he's been doing that. He's been incredibly talented, talked in many different places, and traveled around the world doing various things. Former chair to Games NI on steering communities in Belfast Media Festival and Digital Cities Belfast, creator of the creator of the Idea Jam and Run for the Border, a STEM ambassador, and does regular volunteering at events all around Northern Ireland. Despite all this, he has still managed to find time last year to write and produce a primary school Star Wars musical. Everything was obviously made by hand, all at home, all produced and planned. And he gladly will he'll tell you about it if you ask him. He loves it. And we did find a very good time going through what he made and the adventures he went through to get it all put together. But now we have a couple of questions for him, and we're going to go through them. So you've already explained who you are, Kevin. Mm-hmm. And out of interest, how did you get into the game studio? Obviously, you explained how Google is kind of your friend, or searching around the internet to learn how to do things is very, very productive. But how did you do it?
I sort of went through this twisty turny history during that presentation. The show, I was, traveled around here, and I worked over there. I worked for the New Zealand Department of Labour, and I did rode a tricycle around Australia, and I also learned HTML. I worked in New York City during the .com boom. But all of these things came from, if I had to sum it up into how I got here, it was not being afraid to take a leap, not being afraid to say yes to things. The best career advice I tend to give to people is replace the phrase "I don't know" with "give me 15 minutes on Google." And what that shows is shows a humbleness. Mm-hmm. You're not lying and saying "I do know this." It shows that you are resourceful. It shows that you are motivated to find the answer instead of just push the job off onto someone else. Mm-hmm. And so for example, when I moved over to Northern Ireland, it was to come here to be the art director on a kids' TV series. Now, I had never worked in TV. I had never worked in, I haven't even worked in animation at the time, other than doing, say, web ads, banner ads, Flash, that kind of a thing. But, how different is animating here to animating there? Why not? I applied for the job, came over for the interview, seemed competent enough to handle it, and they took a punt on me. So there I was for the next year, working 52 episodes of 5-minute series. 5-minute episodes, 52-episode series. That was over the course of a year and a half. And then from there, that company said, well, we could turn this Hector game into a show, but why don't we try it as a game, like a throwback to the old Monkey Island Day of the Tentacle style. And so we took some of the episodes and some of the characters, and we went, yeah, this could work as a game, and we made it as a game. It's that why not? Let's try it. We've never done it before, but there's no reason why it should fail. Let's go into this assuming it's going to succeed. That's pretty much an easy philosophy. Like, why shouldn't it succeed? Is a good question to ask yourself.
Well, this is the thing. It's even from that, I don't know this much. This is actually quite insightful for me as well. But the opportunities which you can kind of gather and kind of salvage from different skills that you learn. So you didn't do TV, but then you did do TV from previous experience. It's always being able to build on something that you've already learned and done. So I'm guessing try things out, see how you get on. Yeah,
I assume that everybody's got a hidden talent, everybody's got a book in them, everybody's got a song in them. There's always something you want to get out. And you don't know what opportunity is going to lead to the next opportunity. And this is something that I would say in terms of even someone in the games industry who wants to grow their company or grow their just their reach or their network is if you assume that everyone you're talking to now is going to have progressed in their career or their business or anything like that 3 years from now. Okay. There is no point in going to, say, a gaming event and saying, somebody please introduce me to all the CEOs.
Right.
Instead, meet all the interns and meet the enthusiasts.
See how they get on.
And make friends then, because today's interns are tomorrow's junior editors, and today's junior editors are tomorrow's editors, and editors are CEOs. And so it's not about climbing, but it's about treating everybody in a way that says, maybe one day in the future, we'll come back and work together because we hit it off at this thing. So it's saying yes to people, saying yes to opportunities, and don't let your lack of knowledge stop you from getting started.
I must admit, the experience with the internet and Googling stuff from a programming standpoint, it is very useful. Stack Overflow has helped so many projects, maybe even revived them. But there's a question from Mark, and he asked, is it best to join a big game company or a small games company, or would you say going down the path of creating your own game would be the best?
I think that really depends on how you're wired. Some people want to be given a list at the beginning of the day and complete that list by the end of the day. Some people want to be a cog in the machine, or just get lost in the shuffle. Give me my 8 hours and then go home and take it easy. Now the world needs experts. The world needs programmers. The world needs I'm not saying a place like Rockstar. We'll have an entire floor of modelers and a second floor of animators and a third floor of coders, and they will they'll grab all the graduates within a 500-mile radius and say, we'll take you all. And that's fine. That's you can say I worked in games. I did GTA 5, whatever you want. But if you are wired differently, you have your own ideas and you want to make them happen. Well, small companies, that's the place to do it. The indie scene, as far as I'm concerned, the innovators are in indie. Because when you get too big, when you get to the size of Rockstar or Bethesda or making these massive games, you can't gamble on things anymore.
That team is designated to do one thing.
If you're doing GTA 5, what are we doing next year? We're doing GTA 6. What are we doing next year? GTA 7. And it's because it's an easy billion. And if you're an indie, somebody chucks you 20,000. And that's like, woohoo, here we go. And then that's when you make the game where it's gravity and time are reversed. And it's like, well, there's no genre for this. I know, it's the indie genre. And so we're going to play a game where I am grass. And I have to, grow as high as I can before the lawnmower comes. I don't know. But the random weird stuff, if you ever go to a place like Gamescom, Expo, or even QCon, that sort of thing, but the really big stuff, sure, the giant battlefronts and all that stuff is great. But the indie floor is the place where you see the weird stuff, the inspiring stuff, where it's like, these are the guys that are going to invent the new genres and invent the new experiences. Instead of the ones that are just, let's do the same thing again, except in the Wild West. Let's do it again, but in space. Right?
Different kind of innovations and kind of branching off different kind of small little kind of bite-sized increments. And then bing.
Sorry, back to Mark. Yeah, the question being, you can cut your teeth as part of a big company. But if you've got a big idea, it will take a very long time before your place in the big company allows you to rise up the ranks when you can talk to somebody who actually has the ability to pull the trigger. I know plenty of people, I know a guy who worked for like 8 years on Total War and then quit the day it was launched and went and made a game about, people trying to survive a party. It was just because that grass is greener on the other side. There's always a reason why you might like being part of a huge thing, but also having something that is uniquely yours. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So a couple of questions in terms of what to do whenever you're trying to get started. Now, you explained how to get into it. So you've got the internet, obviously, it's kind of the connection there and be able to research is quite key. But equipment-wise, would you say computers obviously are quite useful? Not the extent of like graphics tablets, be able to produce vector drawings and such, but what would you recommend as like a starting kind of base to maybe make games?
Well, I think the understanding, and the understanding is greatest now more than any, is how little it takes for a game to be a game. So for example, take mobile hyper-casual, right? Take anything made by Voodoo or Ketchup or anything like that. They're incredibly popular. They're insanely popular, and they're insanely simple. It's circles with some numbers on it, and things, when circles hit each other, they disappear. A game does not have to be The Witcher 3. Like if you go into the games industry going, my first game is going to be The Witcher 3, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. But anybody with a little bit of work, it's like you can make a game out of Minecraft Redstone. Minecraft is your SDK, and if you figure out the tools that you have at your disposal, you make a game in it. You can make it in like those ones I mentioned, Game Maker Pro Studio was the other, Unity and Unreal. Stencil was one that I had over there. But yeah, these things are built so that you can pull the bricks over and pull the little cat from scratch over. It does not have to be spectacular for it to be fun. It can be squares and circles. That's totally fine. So make something with squares and circles, and if it's fun with squares and circles, anything over the top of that is a bonus. It's eye candy. It's gravy. You can do a square and circle game that eventually has space pirates in it, but it's still got to be the same level of fun. Yeah. It'd just be nicer to look at. So start small, think small, make a game in a day. Make a game with dice and paper before you even open a computer. You'll learn a lot more from a quick turnaround, like a game jam, like a one-day build, that kind of a thing, than you will dumping all your resources into 3 months or 6 months of learning how to use stuff you don't know how, and realizing afterward that it was fundamentally flawed from the beginning. So start small, stay small, and learn as you go. Grow as you go. Perfect.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. That is, unfortunately, literally the time we have for the questions. No problem. A lot to consume, but hopefully you found that very insightful to learn and to kind of get the experience and understand, if you want to get started, what to do. So, Kevin, thanks again.
Thank you, Sam.
Now we're going to pass on to Jess.